Jim Colassano and Eric Wade, welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
It is a pleasure to be with both of you today. You're joining us from New Jersey and New York, and I am in south of Salt Lake City in Utah. And today we're going to be talking about how companies are adopting on-demand payroll practices to attract and retain talent. Now, people often think about payroll, what's that offer, the total compensation offer, and that's a good tool to attract people or to keep them there. I'm not sure people often think specifically about payroll practices in general and how on-demand payroll practices might be able to facilitate that process and facilitate the experience that employees have with their work. And so I'm excited to unpack all of this and have a nice conversation with you today. As we get started, I wanted to share Jim and Eric's bio with everybody. Jim is a Senior Vice President of Product Development and Strategy at the Clearinghouse. He has more than 25 years of experience in all facets of the payments and cash management business. He joined the Clearinghouse in 2016 as a Senior Vice President in the Product Development and Strategy Group, where he is focused on product strategy and bank readiness for TCH's new real-time payment system. In this role, he works closely with TCH owner banks on opportunities and applications to address business-related payment problems and identify strategic priorities for this new payment infrastructure. Eric is product manager at PHRca, a recognized leader in the payroll, human resource, and benefits outsourcing industry. Eric has worked at PHRca for over 28 years, and in his current role, he is responsible for payment and tax-related products. He has led the research and launch efforts of PHRca's on multiple new products and payment strategies, including being the first HCM company to offer same-day ACH in 2016 and now real-time payments in 2020. And I could go on and on for both of you, but I'm going to pause there and give you each a chance to just share a little bit more about yourself, your backgrounds with me and my listeners.
Well, from my standpoint, and thank you for that, John. I've actually been in payments my entire career. I started coming right out of college with a bank called Chemical Bank. That has since become JP Morgan Chase for about 30 different mergers. I've been in the payments business and have been very fortunate to be able to work in the older payment systems that have been around for a really long time. And then 5 years ago to join the Clearinghouse so that we could build the first new payment system in the US in almost 45 years. So it's been a really exciting ride. It offers a lot of extremely important benefits to consumers and employees, as we'll hear about as we go forward. But it's been really exciting to be able to take all that experience and bake it into this new payment platform that we built.
Yeah, wonderful. And Eric?
Yeah, so I've been at PHRca a while. Always been tied to tax and payments. I've been in the field, helping out our clients with all their issues. Been in IT and have been in product now for over 12 years. And really very excited about real-time payments. Same day ACH was great, but I've been seeing the pain points from our clients' viewpoint since I started with PHRca. So, 20-something, 28, 29 years now, I've been watching these clients have issues when they go to run payroll on the same day as their check date to do a correction or emergency payroll, or oops, I forgot to run payroll, and it's now the day I'm supposed to pay my employees. All these different scenarios, and the only answer I ever had for them was, well, you can handwrite a check, but I can't move money electronically fast enough because the ACH network is next day, and that you need the money today for your workers, right? So same day ACH and real-time payments, huge blessing to all of our clients who have these situations, and RTP in particular, just amazing to be able to get them paid while you're on the phone with them. Some of the stories I hear from my field people at PHRca, and it's just great to hear those stories. Emergency situation and on the phone, and a minute later, after our payroll process, 15 seconds later, the money's in their account. It's just an amazing thing to hear.
Yeah, that's great. And, it really is nice to be able to pay people and to pay people on time. And so when a hiccup happens for whatever reason, you want to be able to resolve that. It's wonderful to have on-demand approaches. That's fantastic. And we can get more into specifically what this looks like and how you offer this. But I'm curious if you can frame up for us, for me and my listeners. I have organizational leaders, executives, some HR people specifically, but people who do HR things in the course of their day and in managing and leading their teams, certainly. And why is it so important that we think about things in terms of on-demand payroll, outsourcing? Why is that an important service for people, and how can that be leveraged as a strategic advantage when we're trying to attract and retain the best people?
Well, I'll start and just hand it over to Eric. The fact of the matter is, most of the reporting that we've seen over the course of the past couple of years has been pretty clear that financial issues create the most stress for employees in the workplace, right? Managing money from paycheck to paycheck creates a problem for most families. That creates challenges at work. Is something that employees, if they left the workforce after the Great Resignation, want to deal with when they go back into the workforce. And one of the issues that has to be dealt with is employees want to be paid when they need their money. The Federal Reserve had done a survey saying that 40% of the workforce would have difficulty paying for an unexpected expense of $400. When you think about that, it's pretty significant. So when you talk about financial stress, just the addition of being able to get a day or 2 days pay when you need it, as opposed to when the organization is prepared to pay you, is pretty significant in terms of reducing stress. PwC did a survey that indicated that 46% of employees said financial challenges cause the most stress in their lives. And again, how do you deal with that? You deal with that by giving employees more control over the pay that they have earned and the ability to get it when they need it, as opposed to some arbitrary cycle that is set by their employer. And that creates problems, not just for the fact that you don't have any input into that process, but also if it happens on a weekend, if it happens on a long holiday, you may not get paid when you expect to get paid. You may actually get paid 4 days later. So on-demand payroll, earned wage access is a way of giving control back to employees. And when you're trying to recruit and retain talent, putting employees in control of their pay is something that is increasingly becoming more important when you start to look at attracting talent and bringing them on board.
Yeah, it really is an artifact of an old approach to how we deal with employee experience and payroll, isn't it? You know, that you get that every 2-week paycheck, maybe once a week paycheck. And that's why you see all these apps and platforms coming out that, you know, they say this very thing: get paid now, don't wait for your paycheck. And why can't we just figure out how to make sure that we can pay people as they earn their money? Obviously that has to be streamlined, because you can't have your HR team running payroll constantly if it's super complicated. But if you have it streamlined and efficient, and you can make it to where it's on demand, that's fantastic. And then people can live their lives and do what they need to do. Eric, did you have anything to add to that?
No, that sounds exactly what the research that we're seeing as well. Like when we look at our own client base, we see that 75% of our clients are processing payroll biweekly, semi-monthly, or monthly. And interestingly enough, the same percentage, when we look at workers, we find that 75% of workers want to be paid weekly. So you have 25% of clients paying weekly, 75% of workers wanting to be paid weekly. And since employers aren't willing to change to a weekly process for a variety of reasons, including cash flow is a big one for them, earned wage access really fills that gap, right? It allows the workers to get access to their wages early. And with the majority of the programs, there's no cash flow interruption for the client, no fees for the client. So it's a win-win for them, helps out the employees. And what we see with the utilization of people that are using earned wage access is they, not surprisingly, use it 4 times a month, which is weekly.
Yeah, so now people have access. That's fantastic. And let's talk more about how specifically that is attractive to employees. You talked about the research, people living paycheck to paycheck. I think if you're in that kind of a tight financial situation, having access, on-demand access, or weekly access, you know, that's going to be quite an important feature for people. And today in this labor market where we're fighting for good talent, that could be one of the differentiators between you and another organization, right? So what more can you speak to in terms of the research you've been doing, people you've been talking to around that very aspect in getting people in the door? And then once you have them, hanging on to them so they don't leave and take their knowledge, skills, abilities to a competitor, you're right, and go work for someone else.
Yep. So I'm sure your listeners have probably seen a lot of articles like I have. I constantly am seeing articles that talk about living paycheck to paycheck and the percentages are all over the board. Don't get me wrong. But so one of the ones I looked at more recently was talking about like 64% of workers living paycheck to paycheck. But the thing that was most interesting about the article was it talked about people making over $100,000, because you wouldn't think that they live paycheck to paychecks, but in this particular research, they were finding that 36% of them were living paycheck to paycheck, which kind of goes to show it's not always about the fact that you're not getting paid enough money. It's just human behavior that you live up to your means. And that's where earned wage access can really help out. So, that's maybe things are going fine for you, whatever wage you're making, paycheck to paycheck, and all of a sudden your car breaks down and you didn't save up money for it. So when you don't do those types of things like saving money for those emergency expenses, this is where another example of where earned wage access can really come in handy. So you worked the entire week this week, but your employer pays you bi-weekly, so you're not going to see that pay for 2 more weeks. Because you have to wait for the pay period to end and a week later, and then the employer usually pays you that following Friday. So you're waiting 2 more weeks for that money you earned just this past week. So it's great to be able to access the money when you want to, and it really helps relieve some of the financial stress that the workers have. And financial stress, like I've seen a lot of research articles about that as well, about how financial stress affects the performance at work. So like one of the research things I saw said 50% of people that are financially stressed are spending 3 or more hours at work dealing with financial issues. Like, well, if you could just access your money right away and you're in and out of the app in, a minute or two, you don't have some of those issues. But when you talk about the survey results, when I was looking at earned wage access, I surveyed it back in 2018 where it started getting hot because that was after Walmart launched it. And when I surveyed it with our clients' workers, we saw that 14% of them were interested in earned wage access. Redid the survey last year, 45% are now interested. So you can see quite a jump in the amount of people that have become comfortable with the concept and are looking to access this type of a program.
And that's really important. What Eric is talking about is really, we've talked, and I've been around for a long time. We constantly talked about what will happen when we see that generational shift, right? When the younger environment, these younger individuals start to enter the workforce and create different expectations. And that's what we're seeing happen right now. The expectation level, and this matters when you try and recruit. The expectation level is not that I'm going to get paid when you want to pay me, right? But I want the flexibility. I want to work for a modern company. I want to work and have options. If I decide I want to get my payroll every 2 weeks, I'm okay with that. But if I want to get paid every day, every week, as Eric said, whatever it may happen to be, and I've got that flexibility, that's going to be meaningful. And a lot of these folks coming into the workplace are used to that. They're used to instant gratification in everything that they do. And I'll say, just from the perspective of an infrastructure provider, we didn't have, and John, you mentioned this before, it's a relic of the past. We have infrastructures that are 40, 45, 50 years old that were designed to deal in batch, in bulk. We never had the capabilities in place within the infrastructure to be able to do these things in real time. So it's a combination of that generational change taking place, the expectation levels rising, and the capability now coming into play to be able to meet those expectations.
And that expectation, part of that is like you mentioned, the generational, well, part of it is the gig economy. That was huge. And that's really why, Walmart started doing it. They're trying to compete for those Uber Lyft workers, and Uber Lyft was offering this because the MasterCard Visa rails came out with an instant way to send money back in 2015. So that became more prevalent, and then Walmart does it. Now the rest of the industry, everyone that hires W2 workers is looking like, well, I got to compete for those same workers that Walmart wants, right? And it just keeps going and going throughout the industry from one industry to another.
Yeah, and you bring up, both of you have brought up paycheck to paycheck issues, and part of this is consumer behavior. Part of this is, people not saving enough. And we could have a whole conversation about all of that. But we also live within a system, where there are things like unforeseen healthcare expenses that can cripple anybody. I mean, you could have really great benefits, make a really nice income, and then you get hammered with a horrible diagnosis, or you have a really bad accident. And now all of a sudden, all of that financial security you had is out the window, right? And that can really happen to anybody. And that's one of the scary things, as I look at, I feel like my family, we're pretty financially secure and stable, and we've saved for a rainy day and everything. That's great until a catastrophe happens. And then we run through that runway of savings and all those things, that can happen pretty quickly. And then all of a sudden you're reliant on paying those bills, or, how you have a kid who's sick or injured or whatever. So anyways, I just add that into the complexity of this conversation around just paying people in real time for the work that they do. And both of you have mentioned the generational kind of expectation of younger millennials and Gen Z workers who really do want to get paid for what they've done in real time, and they don't want to wait 3 weeks. 3 of my oldest children, they're all teenagers, they all work, they all get paid every 2 weeks, and they started their jobs and they didn't get paid for several weeks after they started. And every single one of them was like, why in the world does it work this way? I've worked all these hours, I haven't seen a penny yet. Like, is this slave labor? That's what they say. I'm like, you're going to get paid eventually. And they have, and but it's just a total mindset shift. And frankly, if you have the Walmarts and other big players already making that shift, you better hop on board, or you're going to get left behind.
Yeah. Go ahead, Rick. I'm sorry.
No, I was just agreeing. I agree.
Yeah, and I think you raised another very interesting point, John, which is, most of the RTP network, the participants in the RTP network are banks, right? Been around for a really long time. They talk about the responsible use of money. So when you talk about, getting earned wage access, getting immediate access to the money that you earn, generally, when you're talking about financial wellness, there are also other services that go along with this, right? So it's the ability to get your money when you need it. But a lot of companies are also offering credit counseling, financial counseling, financial planning, credit building tools, saving tools to help employees not just get their money and spend it, but get their money and know how to invest it, know how to create a rainy day fund, because there are a lot of folks I talk to nowadays that don't even know the concept of having a rainy day fund. But it's a larger picture of when you're trying to recruit, when you're trying to go out and hire new individuals. It really is taking a holistic view and making sure that this is only one arrow in the quiver, if you will, in terms of trying to bring people on. And if I bring it back to the network, right, we offer one element of it, and it is that flexibility. The other point I wanted to just make is we're not just talking about employees. You have to understand the reason those legacy systems are in place is because it's not really easy for an employer to get the funding that they needed to actually make their payroll. So one of the things that we've done on the RTP network is allowed companies to compress the amount of time it takes to actually get the money into the payroll company's hands so that the pay can actually be made. And it's another set of tools that allows companies to operate instantaneously. We have a dollar limit that we just raised on the individual transactions to $1 million, which provides access to a broader base of companies who want to start to use real-time payments. But it's more than just, I'm going to start to give money away to my employees faster. It's, I also need to make sure we're dealing with the companies who need to be able to fund those payrolls so that they can get that done efficiently. So it really talks about creating efficiency across the entire chain that allows and enables this capability and this option to be provided to employees as a part of that financial wellness package.
Yeah, very well said. And I think about that too, in the consulting work that I do, I'm in a good situation. I'm a professor, so that's my day job. That's my security. And then I do consulting work and other things on the side, my side hustles. And, I bill people, and you got the 30 or 60-day terms, right? And so it takes a while for people to get the money back into my cash flow for the other things I'm doing in my business. And so I get that. And when I'm paying employees, that can be a struggle. And so whatever we can do to streamline this process for everyone at every stage is only going to improve the circumstances for everyone, I think. So I think that's a very good point, and it's one of the great benefits of the approach that you're taking. So Eric, why don't you tell us then a little bit more specifically about how anyone who's listening who might be intrigued by this, but they've never done it in their organization, how could they start the process of exploring this with you?
Exploring earned wage access?
Yes.
Yeah, sure. So earned wage access programs, they do vary, but I'll kind of walk you through a common scenario or the most common scenario. So usually what you do is you end up contracting with a third party, which might be a payroll company, or it could be a standalone company that's agnostic to your payroll company. So there's a contract involved, and as part of the contract, you're giving them access to time and payroll information. So they need to connect to your time and payroll system so they can get the hours or the salary information and get the pay rate information. So once that's put in place and the integrations are set up, then it's really just a matter of the workers. So the workers in this process flow, they're going to go into an app. The app is going to show them the amount of hours and time that they've worked. Usually it shows them the gross wages they've earned, the projected net, and the amount available to them, which may or may not be the same as the projected net. So they go in, they see how much is available to them. They say, okay, I want $100, let's say. Actually, that's, believe it or not, pretty close to what we see is the average amount that gets taken is, I think $89 is what I saw last month. So it's not usually a ton of money we're talking about that they need. They just need a little bit to get by to pay these bills, right? So they take $100 in my scenario, and that's fronted to them usually by this third party. Once again, could be a payroll provider, could be a standalone company. And therefore the employer's not out any cash, which is huge for the employer, right? They don't want cash flow interruption. So the money gets sent to them from the third party. It could go to a proprietary card. That's one of the models, and usually it's free if it goes to a proprietary card, or if you want it sent to your bank account or some other account, usually the program will charge you a fee for it. You being the user, they're the ones that are going to charge a fee, not the employer. Then when the payroll period ends, that is usually going to be sent over to the payroll system as a deduction. So we'll see the $100 deduction, and then we process the payroll, take the $100 deduction out. And that's the point in time when the third party would collect that $100 from the employer, because that's the point in time that the employer normally would have paid the $100 to the worker. So once again, the employer's whole, the third party's now whole. The employer didn't have to do anything in this entire process flow. They're not on any cash. So it's a win-win for the employer, win-win for the employee, and everyone ends up in a win-win situation, which is why the product is really taking off and is so successful.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I can't help but think the thought has come up a few times as we've gone through this conversation. You have the title loan, the payday loan industry, right? And that's traditionally what people have turned to if they've had to access money from their forthcoming paycheck and they don't have it yet. If their employer can't give them an advance, they go to, a title loan place, a payday loan place. And the problem with that, they provide a service, but they have high fees. And there's been lots of conversation lots of critiques of the industry and on those fees and the interest rates and those sorts of things that people have to pay. And so if you can just give people access to their money that they've already earned without those fees, that is fantastic for people, especially lower earning brackets, who have less disposable income to be working with in the first place.
Yep.
Well, Jim and Eric, this has just been a fun conversation. It's been eye-opening for me. I've learned a lot, and I hope it's been useful for my listeners as well. Before we wrap up for today, I just wanted to give you a chance to share with listeners how they can connect with you, find out more about your work, your teams, and then give us a final word on the topic for today.
Eric, you want to start?
Sure, I'll go first. Obviously people can go to our website. We offer earned wage access, but we actually offer RTP in a different way as well. We offer RTP as part of payroll. So as I mentioned before, earned wage access is one of the use cases, but we have clients that want to run payroll on the same day as a check date, whether it be emergency or whether it be scheduled. Maybe they want to pay people a little bit faster, even though it's still biweekly, right? Or whatever their situation is, they can use RTP with paychecks to process their payroll the same day as their check date. And that's really one of the unique benefits that paychecks has to offer above and beyond earned wage access. And that's all thanks to the RTP, thanks to the clearinghouse for that network. If you want to connect with paychecks, feel free to go to our website.
And similar, you can go to theclearinghouse.org, go to our website. There is a load of information about the clearinghouse, about RTP, about how it works, about the banks that are on the network, just a load of great information that you can use. I will also tell you, I am probably the most accessible person in the United States. So if anybody wants to connect with me on LinkedIn, feel free to do so. And I'll also say just one last thing. We are in the process of growing out the network, right? Eventually, we want to reach every bank in the country and every employer in the country. But I would encourage you to talk to your employers about this capability, talk to your banks about this capability, and ask them for it. The way that you create more supply is if people ask for it and demand it. So if your bank, if the bank that you're operating with right now doesn't offer that service to you, there are other banks who will. You should talk to your bank. You should find the bank who offers these services. And I think once you start using them, you'll find out not just for earned wage access and for payroll, but the capabilities that RTP provides are innovative and can be used across a spectrum of uses. So I would encourage you to learn more about it and go talk to your banks and your employers about it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jim and Eric. It has been a pleasure. I encourage listeners to reach out, get connected, find out more about what Jim and Eric and their teams can do for you. And as always, I hope everyone can stay healthy and safe, that you can find meaning and purpose at work each and every day. And I hope you all have a great week.